Alright, so I'd like to clear up any confusion anybody with Asperger's or any parent or kin of anybody with Asperger's might have on what exactly is it and how to understand it better. So first, let's look at some of the neurological differences in Asperger's. I think the Intense World Theory, published some time ago, addressed neurological differences better than any other article I've read. And basically what it said was some of the differences were neuronal processing, also linked to sensory sensitivity. It also mentioned Aspie's brains matured faster than neurotypicals, and the entire premise of the article was claiming that some Aspies had higher empathy than the average person. The key word in that previous statement being some. Your friend, child, husband, wife, whatever, may not fit all the criteria of Asperger's, like any other condition. Asperger's may be comorbid or affect individuals differently if they were to have another condition. You may even notice some criteria on Asperger's can contradict in some cases. That being said, some ways this happens are when an Aspie can be a good speaker and hold intense gaze. One may even call this the 1,000-yard stare. Though, other Aspies have poor eye contact and have trouble bringing their words to the open. Well, some Aspies are very cerebral, so bringing their words out in the open can be very hard for them. Some Aspies may even lack a sense of closeness, while others may feel an extreme and inappropriate sense of closeness to others. So while this may be said, some Aspies being able to read for hours, while others feeling overwhelmed by the amount of text in the book, is yet another example. It's also a good example to focus on, as these contraries make up the criteria for Aspie confusing. One can say no Aspie is an X, but are all Y. Basically saying, oh, all Aspies can't have eye contact, but yet there are some Aspies that have incredible eye contact. Some of these criteria may be a bit too narrow when it comes to Asperger's. And this is, of course, where the spectrum comes in. Basically, I envision the spectrum not as a linear scale of colors, but instead like crossroads of sorts. I see overlappings of other conditions that could possibly be comorbid with Asperger's. Some of these include ADHD, dyspraxia, even narcissism as described with multiple complex developmental disorder, which, fun fact, a lot of cases of narcissism are actually just misdiagnosis. Most of these are actually Asperger cases and vice versa. And let's face it, an excuse for psychiatrists to admit they have no idea what's going on but have to give you a diagnosis anyways. That's basically what multiple complex developmental disorder is. As when you look at the criteria, we see psychopathic traits, narcissistic traits, autistic traits, basically a bunch of traits put in there, as well as schizophrenic traits as well, hallucinations. And sometimes I wonder if this disorder was basically made up to give people who malingered so much a valid illness because the psychiatrist simply had no idea what else to diagnose them with. Regardless, psychology is an extremely complex subject, so maybe it's alright to have this illness, since some people just simply cannot be outright diagnosed with anything. I mean, the psychology world is so deep that I'm sure there are some conditions that have yet to be discovered even today. And a lot of traits are being added to the low and high functioning autistic spectrum. Some traits simply don't even carry their way throughout the entire spectrum. One example being ADHD. When I first heard ADHD is being introduced on the spectrum, I was shocked. I was shocked because most Aspies were able to hold tight concentration on what they were interested in. That goes without saying in regards to attention economics. Anyone would lose interest when having to do something they didn't find fun. Introduce that uncomfortable boredom of doing something they didn't want to do. They'd probably go play games or browse the web or something. And that's sort of why I didn't expect that ADHD would be in the spectrum, until I looked more into the amygdala, which has impacts on information processing and can impact attention. Oops, that basically missed my radar. Aspies actually have smaller amygdalas and can get overwhelmed easily in stressful situations. When this happens, there can be a tendency to increase cortisol production, which is why some Aspies have odd body shape to them. Because this excess of cortisol can be weight that is hard to lose, it can be distributed anywhere on the body. And since amygdalas are smaller, Aspies may also have the tendency to not have an appropriate sense of fear. This is because the amygdala is to warn someone not to trust someone else if they exhibit any red flags. Some Aspies may exhibit this and can trust the wrong people if not careful. Statistically speaking, apparently there are a lot of abuse cases reported against people with autism. And another example of amygdala being the main component for fear is a case study about a woman who is basically the patient SM046. And it was a woman whose amygdala was completely destroyed during her childhood. And this woman experienced no fear whatsoever when faced with bad situations. I mean, she had a gun pointed to her head and she still felt no fear. She has also experienced domestic violence because her amygdala deficit prevented her from knowing the warning signs. This is just another example as to why every Aspie should be careful with their trusting nature. Another comorbidity to mention would be schizotypal, and not many people consider this, but after looking at MCDD, it is definitely a possibility. Most Aspies may hang on to a potential role, a role that could possibly integrate them into society better, a role that may be religious, magical, or practical in nature. An Aspie may claim to be priest-like, have the powers of a video game character, or even take on a more formal role, such as an erudite scholar or dancer, or some roles may be out of place before an Aspie. These can be crucial to them. It's important they strive to be or have accomplished being. It's not uncommon for Aspies to claim they have a magical intuition or powers. Some may even claim to be aliens or have unworldly dress or hobbies. Often common criteria are of schizotypal, but it's a less diagnosed condition these days. Of course, this video is only covering the surface of Aspies, so many are so unique. The spectrum usually indicates the intensity of the autistic traits and how they function. Since Aspies are highly functioning, though, they may exhibit a handful of traits. Some may be just a couple, though these are not retarded traits, as Aspergers and autism certainly do not equal retarded. And they are most likely functional members of society. Most are tested to have an average to above average IQ. And this video is only scratching the surface, and I hope it helps somebody out there who is struggling to understand how the spectrum and comorbidity works, or even just helping another Aspie out there. So thank you for listening.